Delivering his diagnosis on those awful election results, the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock.
We, of course, meet at a difficult time for our party.
The Welsh Conservatives held their conference in a venue funded by the European Union. But of course it's the UK's exit from the EU being blamed by some Tories here for their poor results.
So what should we do next?
But Mr Hancock's message that it's time to compromise with Labour to ensure Brexit is delivered hasn't gone down too well with the party faithful here. I sat down with Maya Reeves, who's been a member since the 1970s, and her friend Lisa Francis.
I would support a customs union, so, that's my view.
You look very shocked at that.
Well, we have to agree to disagree, because otherwise...
Exactly.
We're old friends.
That made you nearly choke on your lunch. Are you worried about what it's doing to your party?
Of course, because we deserve better. It is confusing, and it hurts. It hurts.
But how to heal that hurt? One option being discussed here, whether a new leader would help revive the party's performance.
I personally think that Theresa May isn't actually listening to her members.
So do you think it's time for her to go now?
I do. I think it was time 2, 3, 4 months ago.
One man said to be preparing for a possible vacancy at number 10, the Home Secretary. Sajid Javid told delegates he once worked on his father's market stalls in Wales. The trips were always lucrative, he joked.
I said, Dad, what's the secret to your success? Why are you proving so popular in Newport? And he replied, it's my accent, son. They don't think I'm Punjabi, they think I'm Welsh.
Would it help my blood pressure if we got a new party leader? Our Prime Minister has done a fantastic job under such difficult, pressurised circumstances.
But is it time for her to go now?
The Prime Minister has made it quite clear that once the Brexit deal is delivered, then she will stand aside to allow a new leader, and I think that that is the right approach.
And so opinion here among the grassroots just as divided as it is nationally, with little agreement on the cause of their symptoms or how to treat them.
Darshana Soni there. Well, as both major parties lick their wounds after the local elections, there are plenty of Labour figures in pro-Brexit areas claiming the party has been punished for trying to obstruct a Brexit deal. Talks are still going on between Labour and government ministers aimed at reaching a compromise, with both Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn declaring they want to agree. The impasse could be unblocked by a deal over a customs union. But how many of their own MPs could each leader rally behind it? Our political editor, Gary Gibbon, reports.
Not a setting you'd expect to find someone exploring partnership with the government. This week's May Day rally in Trafalgar Square.
Let me just say this government may well, by this autumn, be out of power.
Labour's Shadow Chancellor John McDonnell didn't mention Brexit, but behind the scenes, he, alongside some of Jeremy Corbyn's top advisers, has been moving the search for a Brexit compromise to a new level of engagement.
Prime Minister, thank you very much for joining us.
Theresa May this week told MPs the talks had shown areas of agreement on Brexit between Labour and the Tories, which might just help her get her plan through Parliament.
I think, actually, there is a greater commonality in terms of some of the benefits of a customs union that we've already identified between ourselves and the official opposition.
One source close to the talks said that the meetings between Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn had been pretty awful, like two different species trying to communicate. But more recent meetings with Jeremy Corbyn's senior team and John McDonnell, Michael Gove as a senior Brexiteer on the government side stepping in as well, had gone much better. The two sides, it was said, are now engaged in much more serious talks than many people think, seeking out compromises the Tories could tolerate and which Labour might accept.
She has only one shot at having a respectable legacy as Prime Minister, and that's to deliver the first stage of Brexit, getting out of the European Union with a deal based on her withdrawal agreement. And this kind of compromise with the Labour Party is her only and last chance at getting that kind of legacy. So I would have thought that even the hyper-cautious Theresa May will feel that this really is the last chance she's got.
Government supporters of the reach out to Labour argue that all the Tory MPs who backed the Prime Minister's withdrawal deal the last time it came to the Commons, with its backstop provision, a temporary customs union in that, shouldn't mind backing a customs union for a little bit longer. Some, though, argue Tories will run a mile from such a plan, and you could end up with many more Labour MPs potentially supporting it than Tories, a reverse of when the 1931 national government was formed.
The nation is in trouble. The nation is in difficulties.
We are into the territory of Ramsay MacDonald. I was looking up the figures. When we had that unity government, that was pretty much dominated by the Conservatives, but him leading it. I think it was something like 540 Conservatives and the rest this National Labour group. We're into that territory. I've done the numbers on this. I think we're looking at, if the last indicative votes is anything to go by, maybe you'll get 26% Conservatives and the rest provided by Labour votes.
I think we would have more than them if they were to get 160. I think you might be looking to see 160 Tories going through this, but look, I mean, they're in a corner.
How would that go down with the party?
It won't go down very well with the Tory party.
How would it go down with your party?
Well, it depends on any deal. We're not going to sign up to any damn thing. We want a deal which protects jobs, which protects the environment, all the stuff that we've said many, many times.
Some think many more Tories will feel able to back the deal because the government isn't signing up to a permanent customs union but a temporary one until after a general election. The next government has firmed it up or negotiated something else.
You can perhaps agree on one thing now that would last for a few years and then go into the next election agreeing to disagree about the long-term goal. That is the kind of deal that might be put in place, and that is not something I believe that runs the risk of shedding, a huge bulk of the Conservative Party.
John McDonnell joining the talks at the Cabinet Office this week. Privately, many Labour figures have said they want the Tories alone to own Brexit. Has that calculation changed? One Cabinet Minister, listening to Labour in the room, thinks there's a 40% chance it has.
Gary Gibbon there. Well, earlier I spoke to the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, who was at the Welsh Party conference, and I asked him, does he accept the government's best chance now is to do a deal with Labour?
Well, I'd always prefer to do it with Conservative votes, but it's clear that we need compromise in the House of Commons in order to get this done. I think that the best deal is the Prime Minister's deal, but that has been put to the vote 3 times and it hasn't yet found a majority.
The difficulty is, you've just said at that conference you've been speaking at today, Jeremy Corbyn is the most dangerous party leader Britain has seen in a century. Well, that doesn't bode well for working together, does it?
Well, I absolutely think that he shouldn't be Prime Minister, and I think there's
but he should help you deliver Brexit.
Long list of reasons why that's true.
But he should help you deliver Brexit.
There are many Labour MPs, and I'd like to reach a compromise with enough to be able to get a deal over the line. So I don't demur from my view that Jeremy Corbyn would be a terrible Prime Minister and we need to keep him out of number 10.
This is a man you are describing as a threat to national security, but you are then acknowledging that you want to do a deal with him over Brexit. What are the public to make of that?
They're to make of the fact that I want to deliver Brexit and then I want to get on with delivering everything else that people want to see in order to keep Jeremy Corbyn out of Downing Street. It's a very clear position.
But the reality is where we are now, that the obvious outcome of cross-party talks with Labour is your government being forced to move to Labour's position on a customs union, something Theresa May said she would never do.
Labour have obviously come into this saying that they'd rather have the customs union. We've come into it saying we'd rather have the Prime Minister's deal. I think the Prime Minister's deal is better than a customs union for lots of reasons.
And as we've said, the Prime Minister's deal has been roundly rejected. The difficulty, as you will well know, is engaging in discussion with Labour, potentially moving closer to the Labour position, means you alienate many on your own party. And arguably, you're in as big a mess as you have been throughout this whole 2-year process.
people want to see us leave. You know, I didn't have anybody on the doorsteps during the election campaign say, well, I'm worried about this detail or that detail. They just said, can't you just get on with it? That's the point I was making when I said we need compromise to be able to deliver Brexit and then get on to all of the other things that matter in life. If you voted Brexit, then voting for the deal that delivers Brexit seems the reasonable thing to do. But we haven't been able to persuade everybody to do that yet. And I think that, therefore, we need to talk to Labour, and that then requires compromise. That's my point, because I want to deliver Brexit, deliver on the referendum, and then get on to everything else.
You keep referring back to Mrs May's deal. It has been roundly rejected, and arguably that's one of the reasons why you were so badly trounced in these elections, because people think you're not moving forward, you're not offering anything new.
I think that not leaving the EU on the 29th of March was a mistake. I think we should have done. I voted for that repeatedly. That's the sense of frustration that I sensed from many, many Conservative-inclined voters, the frustration that we haven't been able to do that. So I very strongly think that that is what we should do.
Well, with me now is the Green Party MEP, Molly Scott-Cato. You did very well that night. You're in a small group of parties who did well. You'll know that whenever the Greens do well, everyone says it's a protest vote. This isn't any different, is it?
This isn't a protest vote at all. As you say, we did extremely well, the best results in our history. We've got 3 times as many councillors now as before the elections, and there are 50 council chambers up and down the country where there's a strong Green voice. And people have voted for us because they know that we're strong on the environment, because they know we'll protect the environment against plastics, because we're strong on climate, and that's become such an important issue that it's delivered us a really good result.
There's no doubt that Brexit was a huge issue in these elections. You took councils in key Labour areas, crucially Labour areas which voted Leave. Why would people, Labour Leave voters, vote for the Green Party, which wants a second referendum, if not to make a protest vote?
So in my patch, for example, in Mendip, which is a strong Tory area, we went from 2 councillors to 10 councillors. In the Forest of Dean, a strong Labour area, we got an additional 6 councillors there. So people are voting for us in both those areas. But I think in Leave areas, what it's about is the fact that we haven't neglected the reason people voted for Brexit. Fundamentally, it wasn't about the European Union. It was about the way their communities had been neglected. We've got strong policies on stopping tax avoidance, on controlling corporations, on making sure there are strong local economies with good green jobs. And people understand that that means we care about them, and that's why they're rewarding us with a vote.
It's difficult to see how these forthcoming EU elections will be about anything other than Brexit, and this is going to be the real test for you, isn't it? Finally up against some of the pro-Brexit parties, Nigel Farage's party. The danger is you'll be crushed once again, isn't there?
I absolutely think we won't be crushed. I mean, we're the strongest Remain party. We've got more MEPs than the other parties that are strongly supporting Remain. But we've also got that additional commitment to the environment, and particularly our strong policies on climate change. We've seen how much that's rising up the agenda, and I think that's the reason we've got Remain plus climate. That's why we're going to do very well in these elections.
And how much do you think your success is in part because of the huge protests that we saw with Extinction Rebellion?
Well, Extinction Rebellion have transformed the conversation on climate, and that's needed. We've needed that for a long time. So Sky showed that 60% of people support their demands, but only 20% support their methods. So the solution to that is to have a fair voting system so that we have enough Greens in Parliament to really take through the radical action we need on the climate emergency.
Now, you see that much of the talk today is about the Tories and Labour working together to try and find a compromise deal on Brexit. I mean, is that the best way forward as far as you're concerned?
Well, the closer Labour get to agreeing a deal on Brexit, as obviously it's a disaster for the country and we would resist that, but that's bringing their voters across to us. It's making people leave the Labour Party and join the Green Party.
So you're not in favour of trying to find a deal?
Absolutely not. There isn't a good Brexit deal. The best future for our country is remaining in the EU. That's the platform we'll be standing on in the European elections, and I expect us to do very well.
Molly Scott-Cato, thanks very much for coming in. Thank you.